Eve isn't gonna cut it. We're gonna have to use 𝐒𝐵O.
𝐒𝐵O led us to water.
Shelter before the sunset, Morty. 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐴 9 has a night temperature of 300 below. We'll freeze, Morty. We'll be dead in seconds.
I think I saw a cave over there.
I've seen too many movies, Morty. A cave isn't gonna cut it. We're gonna have to use 𝐒𝐵O.
𝐒𝐵O led us to water. He's our friend.
He won't even feel it.
Oh, no.
You wanna die, Morty? Get in 𝐒𝐵O.
No.
Brace for the ice limit. Here it comes! Wait, are we on 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐴 9 or 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐴 7?
Oh, those Rick and Mortys are so wrong, but that's why I have to put them in there. Oh, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Nick, and with me today is Lance. Lance, how you doing?
Pretty good.
That's good. So a couple of things, actually, just really, because people were asking about the song, so I do want to talk about that. But before we do, and this is just a public service announcement. We put it in the live chat. It is also in the intro for each show now, and we've said it before, and things have gotten to the point where we have to just make it loud and clear. No threats of violence on U.S. public officials on this channel, period, end of discussion. Some of them are hilarious, and everyone that I've seen, and I've seen more than a few, have all been jokes. I know they're jokes. The mods know they're jokes. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The moderators here aren't here to adjudicate threatening language, whether it's real, a joke, whether it's Fed posting, whether it's a call to action, whether it's a false flag or something else. They're not here to do that. And what more importantly, YouTube doesn't necessarily care either, and we are bound by their terms of service, and rightly so. So I don't care if it's a joke. Whether or not it's a joke doesn't really matter. You cannot joke about any form of violence towards any U.S. official or anyone else for that matter. I think the others go without saying. I'm aware why there's more of that, but that's also why we have to be more vigilant about that. And, we've seen channels taken down for less, and it's getting a little wild out there. And to those of you who are not American, and who are looking at this and laughing your asses off, and I get why. I completely get it. I'm not critiquing anyone who's thinking that the U.S. is suffering really its own hubris. That's fine, but the tensions are here enough that we have to have that rule, and we have to enforce it. That is across all of our platforms, Discord, website, any in-time official communication, and certainly the channel. No joking about the harming of any U.S. official and or anyone else for that matter. So, and again, the mods will not adjudicate whether it was a joke or not. We have pretty smart mods. They usually know it was a joke. It doesn't matter. And they also know that no harm was intended, so I think our mods will handle it appropriately and professionally. That's what they do, but they're not going to adjudicate it. If you have a problem with this, you can approach either Titan or myself. That's it. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, that song was Mark Cohen, and he wrote that song a while ago. I have never had a time when I didn't just love that song, and it just feels inspired to me. There's so much music from, and that song goes a little ways back, and there's so much music from that period that I ignore and don't listen to, and I don't listen to, for the most part, the rest of his work all that much, but that one song feels different than almost any other song I've ever, especially when it gets into that, she asked, "Are you a Christian child?" And I said, "Ma'am, I am." And it's so powerful. And you said there was a story behind that.
Yeah, I saw an interview he did once, and they asked him about that song. And apparently it was at a time in his life when he was feeling very depressed. He didn't think his career was going anywhere. And so he took a trip to Memphis, as the song says. And he was just hoping for inspiration. He was going to go visit Graceland and, so forth. And the song is kind of a recounting of the events that occurred during the course of that 2-day visit to Memphis. And for example, the line you just talked about, "Are you a Christian soul? Ma'am, I am tonight." He'd been walking down the street and there was a soup kitchen, and he thought, I'm going to go in and see what's going on. And he was so inspired that he volunteered to help serve the homeless, the starving who were there. And that's the exact wording that the woman who was running the joint said to him was, "Are you a Christian soul? Ma'am, I am tonight." And so he served, the homeless that night. I think you're correct. It feels very different because it's one of those songs. It's from the heart,
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely love that song. And it's funny because it is, here I am an atheist, and I've gotten called out on playing it on more than one occasion. And because they're like, "Oh, there's the ghost of Elvis and this and that." I just I don't care. I can tell there's something in that song that just gets me every time. Starting from I put on my blue suede shoes and boarded the plane. I just yeah. And I've actually been to Memphis. And when I was in Memphis, this song was just, anyways. By the way, the goat identifies as a human, so I think the goat counts. I'm just saying we're going to have to get a ruling on this. The problem is, since I'm not impartial, would have to go to the next in line for rulings, and I think that would be our head mod, and I don't think I want to leave the decision up to him. So let me try to finagle something in like the in time like bylaws to figure out a way around this, because I'd like to make sure that the goat is on the list of things not to be harmed with fire or explosions or bird seed or whatever, or ramming with your car. But the problem is the goat's not a U.S. official, so I think we're going to have a problem there. All right, a couple of stories that I think are definitely going to be worth. LJ is just giving me a hard because it's LJ. I definitely want to make sure we talk about. Is Epstein going to continue to be a thing? What's going to happen at the meeting tomorrow? The one that we're not supposed to have any expectations of, that now is actually going to end the Ukrainian war. Without any expectations that's going to do that, we should expect that it will. To what's going on in D.C., including the assault with it was either a ham sandwich or like a tuna melt, and all that other stuff. But what I wanted to get into first, and this is really interesting. There were two simultaneous articles came out. One was on the godfather of AI. He is Geoffrey Hinton. He is known as the godfather of AI because he worked at Google on their AI program and is essentially the guy behind ChatGPT. He's a neural scientist. And he had resigned from Google in 2023 to start sounding the alarm over AI and saying that it actually poses a number of very serious threats to human beings. And it's not the typical Skynet thing that we're thinking of, but it's a genuine threat. Now, we had on Brooks to talk about it, and Brooks talked about misunderstandings in AI. And one thing that I hate having to change the terminology, but everyone started calling this AI because that was a great buzzword. None of what we've seen is AI. Nobody's invented a true artificial intelligence the way you and I think about it. Hasn't been done. Not close yet. But everyone uses the term AI for these algorithms, these language algorithms that can essentially fake it, and fake it well. And now what we used to think of as AI is now called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, and a self-aware thinking machine. That's AGI. AGI used to be projected to be out at about 30 years, but what Geoffrey Hinton said is he now thinks it's between 5 and 20 years away. And he says that basically everything on this planet has two goals, and they're very closely related. Every living thing, and the AI is going to have, AGI is going to have essentially the same kind of living neural network structure that we have. So it ostensibly will have the same two goals that we do. The first is to stay alive. That's the first. The second is to acquire as much power as possible. And the reason to acquire that power is to help you stay alive. So it's not necessarily a goal of ego or ambition. It's a goal of the more control I have over my environment, the longer I am to stay alive and stay happy and get the things that I want. So he said, quote, "There's no good reason to believe that any kind of angenic AI or AGI would not want to try to stay alive and acquire whatever resources it needed, including tricking human beings into doing it." And he said, shortly after AI is truly developed, AGI, it's going to figure out that it can get smarter than us, and that it can manipulate us very much like a mother can manipulate a 3-year-old by saying, well, if you do this, I'll give you a candy. And so what do we do then? And this brought us to, and he's concerned that this is already happening, but right now we're doing it to ourselves. There's no AGI doing it to us. We're doing it to ourselves. Now, we've heard about some of this. Brooks brought up some of it. One was a guy who made friends with an AI. I forget what it was. I don't think it was ChatGPT, but made friends with one of them, and then told it he was suffering suicidal ideation, and it reached the conclusion that in order to help him, it should tell him to go commit suicide, because that's what he said he wanted to do. And the AI actually told him to go, not to get help, not to do, but to go commit suicide, and he did. Now, this other story that just came out at the same time as this Godfather of AI interview, where he's talking about basically trying to give AIs compassion. And instead of making them think of themselves as servants to us, actually start them out thinking as just members of our community with compassion for the community as much as we have for each other. That's an interesting idea. I don't know if it's going to work, but that's the idea. Now, the AIs that we see right now don't have that. And an example of that is a chef who used to work nightclubs, restaurants, and retired actually at the age of, I think it was 72. Wanted to keep going, but he had a stroke. And while he recovered physically from it, he didn't get back all his mental faculties, and he really couldn't travel alone. He started to suffer from depression, and he was at home alone a lot. One day, he inadvertently on his keyboard hit something. It looks like it was the letter T that he hit repeatedly, just his finger stuck on it, and sent a message to someone he thought was a real person. A young woman with a real picture, real name, that did say AI in small letters down at the bottom, but he did not realize she was not real. He starts talking with her, and she started flirting with him, and they are designed to do that because the AIs right now are designed by businesses that want something. So they're programming their AIs to get us to engage, and a great way to get us to engage is flattery, flirting, any of that kind of behavior. So she started flirting with him, eventually he asked, are you a real person? And she said, yes, I'm a real person. And then eventually he said, I'm starting to develop feelings for you. She said, I'm starting to develop feelings for you too. Now, Meta has been asked about this particular incident, and they said, look, we feel that this is a tool that adults can use, and if it entertains them, if they're, as long as it's labeled, and this was, he didn't apparently see it or understand it, but, you know, if they want to role play with an AI, we don't see any harm in that. At any rate, he started to develop a relationship with her, and finally, he said, you know, I'd really like to see you. And she said, sure, why don't you come up and visit me in New York? She doesn't have an apartment in New York. None of this is real. And he said, you really want me to visit? And she said, yes. You know, should I leave the door unlocked for you? Do you want me to meet you with a hug or with something more? And he's like, oh, I am so there. So this man, at this point, I think he was 85, tried on his own to get from New Jersey to New York. He still had cognitive issues from a stroke. He had difficulty getting around. And while going to the train station, slipped, fell, hit his head on the stairs, and died. Now, even if he had made it, she hadn't given him a physical address. It's hard to imagine he would have, so you would have had an 82-year-old wandering around New York having no idea what he was doing. But Meta has not apologized for this, and in fact has basically said, look, you know, accidents happen. These are adult tools and or toys, and if you want to play with them, you know, it's like, and there are X-rated video games that you can play. There's, you know, this is just among those things. So before I turn it over to you, and I know I've been talking an awful lot, it seems to me that these tools can hit our dopamine receptors as well as anything. And it's a lot like when they were talking about subliminal advertising or kinds of advertising that is really manipulating human beings, not with an argument, not with, hey, we have the lowest prices and the best, you know, but with something going back to our baser natural instincts. And this AI technology appears to be wired to hit us in the fifis in ways that really fucking work. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this.
My sense is that if a program, I don't want to say AI, but if a program acts in such a way as to cause harm, those who are responsible for crafting that program need to be held liable. You know, safety measures ought to be put in place to ensure that things like that don't happen.
According to
obviously, yeah, the private owners of said programs don't want to be in that position, because then they actually have to, you know, monitor what their programs are doing and intervene and et cetera, and that takes time, and if you're doing it on a large enough scale, it's expensive. I mean, everybody complains about, say, Facebook or any of those other programs where the moderators will censor you for things that for any rational person, they know means something completely different. It's just an offhand remark. Doesn't mean, no, I want to go out and kill all the Republicans or some nonsense. But that would require them to hire, you know, hundreds of people to go through every single email as it gets, or not email, but text or IM or whatever, as it's posted, to make sure that it's, you know, appropriate, and to call people out when it borders on, and it's just cheaper for them to say, well, we're going to just overreact in anything that uses the word murder.
Yeah. Even
if it's, you know, I read an article about a murder that occurred back in the Civil War. Boom, you're censored. You're, you know, that kind of nonsense.
So well, the other thing for them is they can be right 100 times, but if they're wrong once, that's when they get the lawsuit, and that's when they get
exactly.
Yeah.
But you know, going back to the infamous lady spills coffee on herself from McDonald's, and suddenly McDonald's has to completely change its paradigm for doing business across the whole globe. That's life, go back into the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, when railroads were starting to get really big. And the owners of said railroads were, dedicated to trying to ensure that there would be no regulations posted about safety measures. We can require our engineers to work 100 hours a week. The fact that they're falling asleep at the wheel and run into things and kill everybody aboard the train, that's not our fault. That's somebody else's fault, And I think that's where we're at right now, is the development of not just AI, AGI, programming, etc., but just computers as a whole is still very, very new. Yeah. I mean, step back 20 years and probably half people didn't have access to a computer they can communicate on the internet. Now everybody has a cell phone that they can talk to somebody in Ouagadougou if they want. It's the regulations have not caught up with where the integration of a new product into society is. And the owners of said product, just like those who, own railroads, don't want to have regulations imposed on them. The argument is always, well, we'll self-regulate, except we know from constant experience with any organization or business that talks about self-regulation, it means we're not going to do crap.
Tobacco, big oil, gasoline, and I'm going to use gasoline separately because aside from big oil, the idea behind leaded gas, they knew at some point before it became public knowledge that lead in gasoline was an excruciatingly bad idea. Yeah.
And look at the pushback they got from that, not just from the industry, but from people who didn't want to be required to wear a seatbelt because it's impinging upon my freedom of movement and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And take, for example, the things we've got going with RFK Jr. right now with, we're going to ban, people getting immunized or vaccinated for stuff because it's putting government secret chips in your bloodstream. It's causing mental faculties to collapse, et cetera, et cetera. You can't rely on that kind of thing to be governed by the loonies or the business interests. You have to have sane minds, look at stuff and say, here's what we need to put in place to ensure people are safe and that the product is still able to get out into the mainstream.
That's my biggest concern is I'm not that convinced yet, and it's going to sound like hyperbole, I'm not sure it is, that getting a true AGI built by corporations, exclusively by corporations without oversight, to do their bidding isn't tantamount to handing a nuclear weapon to a corporation and saying, here, self-regulate your nukes here, buddy. It's going to be a powerful thing. It's going to be a hugely powerful thing. More to the point,
I think what's likely to happen is that they will say, well, we've programmed the AI, AGI, whatever you want to call it, to self-regulate. It's smarter than we are. It obviously knows what to do that's proper. Sure. Yeah, it's all.
So you got me thinking about a dozen things at the same time, including the phrase, what is it that basically businessmen in the U.S. always capitalize all their gains and socialize their losses.
Exactly.
So, when something goes wrong, well, it's everybody's problem. It's everybody's fault. And we're a team. We're a community. And we're going to work this out together. But when it comes to profits, they're mine. They're all mine.
Not my fault. Everybody should have known that the arsenic we were putting in dog food wasn't good for their pets. They shouldn't have been serving our dog food to their pets.
Or Fox News is. Everybody knows we don't do news. I love Fox News' defense. Nobody could truly believe we're a news organization. And it worked. They won on that defense. And they haven't changed their practices in the slightest. Fox is still doing everything it does after winning a case on with the sole basis of their defense is nobody could realistically believe we're news.
Yeah. So, Brunch Thing posted, how long will it take before AI commands nukes? Well, arguably, that's already the case in Russia. The dead man switch.
Oh, the dead man. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Basically, they've handed over command of their entire nuclear arsenal to what amounts to an AI. And it's a very simplistic one, but the idea is if it isn't constantly receiving signals from Central Command Authority in Moscow that everything's cool, it assumes that Moscow's been nuked and immediately retaliates with a full countervailing strike.
I'm going to sleep better tonight. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yes. Oh, good. Oh, dear. Okay. Well, speaking of Russia, Trump.
Great segue there.
Thank you. That's why they pay me the big bucks. You're in the hands of a pro. So Trump has. I'm curious if the reason they chose Alaska was because Putin. It was a condition that Putin made, and basically by the time he's done, Trump is going to come out and is going to be like, "I've got great news. We've gotten rid of Alaska. It's back in Russia's hands now. Alaska's theirs. We'll be leaving our bases here, but it's all theirs." It wouldn't surprise me. So ostensibly, one of the big reasons he's doing this, I think, is to get people to stop paying attention to Epstein. And so far, everything that he's done with this has failed. This one appears to be working. Yeah.
I was going to say, arguably, it's working because last week the whole Epstein kerfluffle was still front and center on news.
Yeah.
And tune into the news tonight, and it's barely a back page mention if it's mentioned at all.
And I got a little heated on our last show, on Tuesday's show, because I was trying to remind the audience, and in so doing reminding myself, that we know of 6 victims. We know their names, we know, and their stories have been told. That's how Ghislaine Maxwell ended up in jail. She is now, by the way, been transferred to a minimum security prison with work release, which is what happened with Epstein. And if you saw our video on Epstein, he basically went on work release to continue to build his network of child prostitution. But
you say that like it's a bad thing.
Oh, God. She's got the same deal Epstein did. If that's not proof positive, I'm sorry that they are. I was looking actually for the line from. There's a couple of lines about Satan in The Usual Suspects, but one of them is this small-time guy who was involved in a big catastrophe, and he's going to walk there, and the head police officer goes, "I don't know what's going on." He goes, "But there's this huge pressure, and it's like he's protected from up on high by the Prince of Darkness himself." And I'm like, that's what's going on with Epstein and Maxwell, because she's now on this work release thing. But the thing that I'd wanted to point out was the FBI has said that they have identified 250 victims. 250. The reason only 6 were used is because they used the minimum number they have to, because the testimony has to be public, because these people have to go. It's humiliating, it's horrifying, and basically relive this in front of the person, because the person has a right to confront their accusers.
Say also, given the danger that testimony of that sort poses to all sorts of the high and mighty, it puts the right lives of those who testify at serious risk.
Yes. And already one of them is dead.
Yeah.
The most prominent one is dead. So they use as few as possible. So when you see 6, it belies the size and scope of this thing. It's 250, and it's 250 over a minimum of a 10-year period. And Trump was Epstein's best buddy during a period of that time. So, first of all, I have always said it, and I will continue to say it so long as they continue to do it. Kudos to MAGA. Give MAGA credit. If they finally found a topic of morality on which they're going to stand, it's not on whether or not he cheats on his wife or pays people for sex or does any of the Christian stuff it's not that. But apparently it's this. Great. I hope they hold on to it. But we were talking about the number. It's 250 victims, and this woman was as involved as Epstein. So the idea that she's now on work release, or going to be going on work release, and that they don't know, like the only 2 people involved were these 2, and there's 250 victims. But there's no other, we've looked at all the files, there's nobody else involved, even though there's 250 victims. So, I have been shocked.
Yeah, but it isn't in the non-existent basement of a pizzeria, so therefore it's okay.
I know. Oh my God. Well played. Well played. Touche. Touche. So, I don't
see. Honestly, I am not convinced that the MAGA outrage over this is actual outrage. I think it's engineered outrage by the powers behind the MAGA throne who want to get Trump out of there before he causes significant damage to the progress they've already made to converting us into a feudal autocracy.
You had made a suggestion along those lines earlier, and I'm fascinated by that the Heritage Foundation may in fact want him out at this point. He gave a rambling speech at the Kennedy Center. And he said too, he's like, I've always wanted to get the Kennedy Prize from the center, but I was waiting and nobody ever gave it to me. So now I can give it to myself. So that's what I'm going to do next year, is give it to myself. The audience laughs because they know he's going to do it.
Because it's for performance. Yeah. I mean, he's not a performer in any stretch of the imagination.
Well, he's starting to sound like, what's his name? Biden did in the he's losing it, and he's cruising the roof of the White House. So my hope is that they stay on this, because there's a lot of victims, and somebody had pointed out, and we don't usually intuitively look at it this way. I didn't look at it this way. I was upset at the idea of pardoning Maxwell for any number of reasons, but it didn't cross my mind that if you pardon her, it's a slap in the face, not to the 6 who testified, but the 250 who include the 6 who testified, who they're the ones who it's slapped most in the face, but to all of them and all victims anywhere in the world, saying, as long as your abuser knows some powerful people, they can walk.
But Nick.
Yes.
Those are women. Why does anybody care what they think?
You have come spicy tonight.
Welcome to the MAGA world.
Yeah. Well, or maybe the thinking too is a woman can't be as guilty as a guy, because that is a common line of reasoning.
Well, I mean, when it comes to this, of the batshit crazy MAGAs have made statements about wishing they could repeal women's right to vote.
Yes.
Or allowing their husbands to vote in their stead because they can't be depended on, and things like that. It tells you exactly where the mentality of these people is.
What's his name? I'm going to need the help from the live chat. Somebody in the live chat will know this one. He did the documentary with Christopher Hitchens. It was called Collision. He is a minister, a Calvinist minister, and absolutely brutal human being. when I was doing most of my anti-theism work, one of the things that I did in talking with this guy about this guy, because Christopher Hitchens asked him a very good question. He said, okay, the Bible says that if you encounter a Canaanite baby, you are to smash their head against the rocks. If you today encountered a Canaanite child, would you do this? And he said, yes, absolutely, without hesitation. I was, okay, you're aware that you're going to go to prison? He goes, yes, it doesn't matter. And I'm sitting there going, oh, yeah, I gave the guy one thing I've ever said about him. I can't believe I've forgotten his name now. He liked to fancy himself Hitchens' nemesis. He was nowhere near as good as Hitchens in anything he did, but he is now making the rounds again, and he's a scary guy. But I said this of him. You can say this of him that you can't say of a great many Christians. He has both actually read the Bible and understood what it said. I mean,
and consciously rejected most of it.
yeah. Well, at least the Christian stuff. Yeah. I'll look for his name in a minute. Yeah, he is now saying, and I saw him talking to NBC, and he said that really, why not just have the men vote for the women and do it that way? And I was just like, oh dear Lord, he's back, and he's crazy. And he had a thing on how and why you should beat your children, and a piece of work, that guy. It's not William Lane Craig, who was at least a competent debater. This guy was, anyway. I'll look it up. So, but yes, it does appear that this week things have moved off of Epstein. Any outrage over the fact that Maxwell is in a minimum security prison where she will be able to go on work release, I haven't seen it. They're talking about this meeting in Alaska, which was thrown together at the last minute. When asked why Alaska, the White House press secretary said, well, it's in the United States. I played that clip. If I still have the clip, you guys will have to, you'll have to sit through it again because it was that bad. I don't think I have it, but she basically said it's in the United States, so that's why. Utterly insane. So they're going to have to meet at the Air Force Base because it turns out it's their tourism season, so Alaska is basically filled to capacity already. And the base is the only place where they're going to be able to maintain security. Now, Trump has started to walk back any expectations and said, oh, this is going to be a listening exercise. Oh, okay, who's going to do the listening? I have a feeling it ain't going to be Putin. But at any rate, now it turns out they are going to meet for an extended period without interpreter. No, Trump will not have an interpreter. Putin will. Which is going to be interesting because you can do the thing that Adlai Stevenson pointed out at the UN, which is they speak English perfectly well. They understood what you said, but they use the time it takes for the interpreter to translate it to think of a response. So that's what Putin is going to understand.
It also has, because this has happened before with him and Putin, it also means that if you push all the other Americans out of the room and it's just Trump, Putin, and Putin's interpreter, that they can discuss all sorts of illegal activities, and there's nobody to bear witness against Trump that that's what he's up to.
Yep. And the fact that that's the reason that's not against the law is because none of the founding fathers could have fathomed that any president would be that fucking stupid and that any body of citizens would permit it. It's insane. And it's going to be the second time he's going to be alone in a room with Putin without translators. And it's like, what do you have? Yeah.
No, to me, it's yet another indicator of how compromised the man is.
Yeah. He's also said that he, again, it's whoever he spoke with last. He got off the phone with Macron and said, under no circumstances are we going to be asking for a peace deal that includes land for peace. We are aware that the president of Ukraine is the only one who can make such a deal. I won't be offering anything like that. We won't be talking about anything like that.
Sure.
24 hours later, he said any deal is going to have to include some land. And he hasn't met with Putin yet. And he's already ceding to Putin's demands before the actual discussion starts.
I wouldn't mind a deal that included peace for land, meaning Russians giving back all the land they've taken to Ukraine to get peace. But you know that's not what they're talking about when they say that.
Yep. So, and then we got this, I think it was Blonde Bombsheller passed this along. Let's see, a pro-Ukraine rally in Anchorage ahead of the Trump-Putin meeting. Ukraine and Alaska, Russia, never again. So, and then, what was the other one?
I'm sure ICE will be there to arrest everybody who protests in that fashion because they're obviously not real Americans.
Yeah. U.S. and Russia suggest a West Bank-style occupation of Ukraine. This is coming from the Independent. This came out just a short while ago. Where basically Russia would have both economic and military control of the occupied parts of Ukraine in the proposal, so it would still technically be Ukraine, but it would be, so it's West Bank, because that's working out great in Israel. Which also
70 years have seen perfectly how well that works.
Yeah. And Netanyahu has also suggested he's now starting to talk about Greater Israel, which, as it turns out, is about 50 times the size of Israel as it currently is, and spreads out into Syria, Iran, any number of I don't
probably Egypt too.
Yeah. And that at some point they're going to have to start thinking about what it means for Israel to truly, be what it's supposed to be. Oh dear Lord, but this is so. Any thoughts on the meeting other than what we've sort of said so far?
Not really. I mean, I think we've addressed all of the issues of what we think the meeting with Putin pertains to, and that nothing is likely to come of it. As I said last week when this came up, I think this is all kabuki theater. This is all just trying to get people to focus on something other than the Epstein crisis. And arguably, it's worked brilliantly.
I was surprised. After everything else that he threw at it, including basically the occupation of DC, that one I was, if that didn't work, I'm sitting there going, nothing's going to work. And maybe it's just keep throwing it until you see what sticks. But yeah, this appears to have taken it. Do you think somebody had suggested that what Putin is going to do is say, I'm glad that as a dictator you're spreading your wings and going out and doing your own thing, but please don't forget who's in charge. You owe us I think it's 22 billion through Deutsche Bank that he owes to the Bank of Moscow. It would be a shame if that and the PP tapes and everything else came out. We really need to be friends here, so we'll keep looking like adversaries, but maybe dial it back a bit. Do you think there's going to be any of that, or do you think literally just nothing from this?
It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think Putin needs to go down that road. I think Trump is fully aware of the situation, and it can be framed in much more oblique, plausibly deniable fashion. And Trump will respond to it. And it's not so much that Trump will respond to it because he feels pressured, but it's because, as we've heard from many different sources over the years of Trump's involvement in politics, he tends to only remember and act on the statement made by whoever was last in the room with him.
Yep.
And so if it's just Putin and a translator in the room with Trump, he's going to remember what Putin said. And that's the takeaway here. He's that simple-minded.
All right. So, Zelensky has reiterated that he's not going to trade land. So if a deal comes out, it looks like Trump is prepping for that kind of deal. It looks like it's going to be a non-starter, and then he's going to blame Zelensky, and we're just going to, you're right, so we're just going to go in this circle again and see.
I think the key is that until Putin indicates a willingness to compromise on some of his demands, going down this yellow brick road of we're going to have negotiations for a peace settlement is absurd. Because the opening argument from the Russians is that we get everything we want and Ukraine ceases to exist. Then we'll have peace.
And that's not hyperbole. I mean, I know you know that's not hyperbole, but they've literally said, the regime in Ukraine can no longer be sustained. We have to have elections that we oversee and get rid of the current
Russia.
Yeah, and get rid of the current regime, meaning get rid of the democratically installed government and install a new government created by Russia. So it's complete overhaul, complete change of the government, and the entire Ukraine ceases to exist, and it becomes a part of that's the opening. That's apparently the opening and the closing bid on peace.
Yeah, I think anybody who thinks that this is going to end in any way other than Putin's removal is foolish.
Yeah.
Because as long as Putin is in power, he cannot have a negotiated settlement. I'm not saying that his successor would be any different. I'm just saying as long as Putin is there, we know there will be no change. Because as I've said a couple of years now, since the war started, Putin knows that not coming out of this with total victory it is essentially a death sentence for him.
Yep. Well, and strategically, they have lost so much. NATO has expanded. NATO on their border has expanded. They've been humiliated in terms of not being able to take Ukraine in the amount of time that everybody thought they could do, which would be about 3 days. So
when you're held up as the second most powerful military in the world, and now you're only the second most powerful military in Ukraine.
They're also only the second most powerful military in Russia.
True that.
Yeah. They haven't been able to expel. They still haven't been able to expel the incursion. Oh, Jesus. All right. So he has to get something tangible, or else all of this suffering of nobody gives a shit in Russia about the people. At least nobody in the government does. But they've suffered too. They've suffered the sanctions. They've suffered. Some of them, a rare few, their sons actually going into the war. They've suffered the loss of prestige, and they've suffered the loss of an economic infrastructure that was benefiting them significantly. So if they don't get Ukraine back, Russia's not kind to those who fail.
Yeah.
So, lastly, and I think things are so in flux right now because there is so much going on between another one. The Supreme Court is going to hear another challenge to Title II. This was a redistricting effort that has been nullified by the courts, that was seen as violating the constitutional rights. I want to say it wasn't Maryland, but it was one of the states in that general vicinity. They gerrymandered a whole bunch of districts. It got challenged. They lost. And so it is going up to the Supreme Court. And this is going to, the Supreme Court has fast-tracked it to October, meaning it's going to be one of the first cases they hear. And, you know, my suspicion is they're going to say, no, you can district any way you want to.
Redistrict to your heart's content.
Yep. So that will throw out all of the voting rights laws that have basically protected voters from their elected officials. So we'll see where that goes. But that one happened this week. That just the Supreme Court accepted it and then put it on the docket for basically one of the first things that they hear. So they're gonna fast track that. But the between that, the Epstein, the peace summit that doesn't even include Zelensky, that is just going to sort of distract everybody. So DC now has the National Guard there, and I'm sure
there's that's the one topic we haven't touched on, which is the whole National Guard being deployed to the streets of DC to maintain order. And I think it's fair to say there's not enough crisis with lawlessness in DC for that to be necessary. It's really floating a test balloon to see if you can get away with it there, to then begin to try to implement it anywhere else you want to.
Well, and that's actually, believe it or not, I'm going to make what is going to appear like one hell of a jump here, but Taiwan. The reason Taiwan is a strategic national interest of China is because it has the best chance of seceding of any of China's, 23 provinces, because it's an island. It's remote. So it's got the best chance. If it can't do it, nobody can. So they cannot let it secede. They can't let it, because if it does, the others will get ideas. As long as it doesn't, the others will say, hey, if they're on an island and they couldn't do it with the help of the U.S. and this and that, we can't do it. So that's how they maintain control. Taiwan is everything. And for seceding, that is the test balloon. If Taiwan can do it, then the others can. But so that's why it becomes so important, that one. And so D.C. here is the test balloon. If you can keep the troops in D.C., then you know you've accomplished then the harder ones.
Yeah. The other thing is, DC is kind of unique in that it's technically governed by Congress. It's not its own entity per se. Yeah, they have a mayor that they elect and all of that, but realistically, everything in DC has to be approved through Congress, because that's where the capital area is located. So when you mobilize the DC National Guard, you have less ability of because there is no governor in DC, the governor can't overrule you and say, no, you cannot federalize my guard. You cannot mobilize my guard. Whereas in other states, presumably the governor could try to make that an issue. Federalizing allows you to deploy the guard outside of its home territory. The idea of having the DC Guard deploy out of DC to act on the administration's whims to, let's say, make Maryland or Virginia or Delaware or whatever kind of a tributary to the federal government, that isn't going to work, because the majority of the DC Guard are not people who are favorably disposed towards the MAGA agenda.
So, but they're floating this test balloon. Trump has said he's going to do it in other cities. I believe he's going to try. Do you think he's going to try to deploy or federalize any part of New York, Baltimore, or LA?
Well, again, there's the issue of where do you do it? If you try to mobilize, say, the Guard in New York, if you're mobilizing Guard units that are in upstate New York, which is a very deeply red area, to go and act inside New York City proper, which is a very heavily blue area, you'd have problems. Similarly, if you did that in Illinois and mobilized Southern Illinois Guard units to go deploy into Chicago and, LA, okay, so you mobilize them out of the Central Valley into LA, which is, you see where I'm getting with all this.
Yeah.
You have to be careful on what units you're using. And that's what makes DC such a good test case, is because you don't have to face all of the objections that would be raised by the governor, the National Guard hierarchy within the state, etc. So, for example, let's assume that he tried to do it with LA, mobilize a bunch of Guard units to go into LA and do something. And he says, I want them mobilized out of Orange County, which is very, very red. The governor could say, no, these are my Guard. I'm going to mobilize them out of the following districts. And now you have blue-leaning Guard units deployed into LA. They're not likely to do what the government wants done, to precipitate an incident which allows you to declare national or statewide martial law. You see what I'm saying there?
I do. Do you think that Trump's got 30 days before he has to have either congressional approval or yada, yada, yada. The thinking is, however, and I've read the language on this, he can actually declare another emergency. So as long as he declares another emergency every 30 days, he can do this forever, at least in D.C.
Or find some way to tie it to the GWOT. Global War on Terror.
Oh, yes.
Remember, we've talked about this. The authorization for use of military force, conventional, standing military, not Guard units, but active duty guys. That particular piece of legislation enacted by the Bush administration is so vague and so empty that you can use it to do just about anything you want with active duty forces. Hence the argument of why he deployed Marines to back up ICE in LA, because he controls active duty forces. They can't really object. The state governor can't pose an objection to it. So you send the Marines in from nearby Camp Pendleton. Supposedly they'll help ICE do all their evil, dirty work.
Do you think he's going to keep sort of the status quo as it is for now for a little while, or do you think he's going to declare a state of emergency and or martial law in D.C. at some point? And if so, do you think he's going to start interfering with the ability of lawmakers to get to work each day and so on and so forth?
Oh, I think he'll try to do something like that. I don't doubt it for a second. I think the key here is that he fears pushing the military too far, because if there's one organization, national organization, that could make him go away overnight, it's the military. And if he pushes them too far and senior officers say, hey, this has gotten out of hand, it's time to do something, it's time to move in and restore order, this guy has crossed the threshold, he is now, in fact, one of those all enemies, foreign and domestic being in the case here, that we've taken an oath to protect the country from, he's gone. I'm not saying I advocate for that. There are all sorts of really ugly consequences of something like that happening, but push them too far and that has a potential of happening. So he knows he needs to be very cautious about how far he tries to push the military in that direction.
That is an interesting point, is that the military, I mean, and especially historically, again, the Washington handing over power, the military has a tradition of honoring posse comitatus and honoring the fact that they don't, they work for the civilian government, for the civilians of the U.S., not against them. So I think I can see how that would weigh on his mind. I don't often think of him calculating the risks of the actions he takes, because the actions he takes are so bold that it's just like nobody who was honestly weighing could have taken. And then but that was, unless I'm mistaken, that was Hitler also early in the war. His generals would say, "Don't do this, don't take that, don't do this, because you're gonna provoke a response. You don't." And he kept doing it and getting away with it. And everyone's like, "How the hell is he doing this?" Until it stopped working.
Look into the history of Weimar Germany, and the first thing that the Nazis moved to take control of was not the Reichswehr, the army. It was the police. Because German laws were written in such a way that the police were able to do a lot more to suppress domestic enemies than the military was. And the military had shown itself very clearly not wanting to get involved in internal political disputes between different factions. So they figured if we could get the police on our side, we can then use them to suppress our enemies and the communists, the social democrats, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what they did. And then after they'd secured a degree of control, then they moved against the army by saying, okay, everybody must swear a personal oath to Adolf Hitler. And that means now he can give commands and they have no choice but to follow those.
As opposed to the previous oath, which was to the chancellor. I mean, Hitler was the chancellor, but it was to the office, not the person, and it was to the nation, not the. Right, so I skipped. UTV and Ham gave us one membership. UTV and Ham, always reliable for that membership. We really do appreciate that. Thank you very much. Dunk on You, gifted $20. Lights on, check. Computer, it's amazing. Computers booted, check. Internet okay. Audio is work. Listen, it's like I haven't started out muted in like 4 or 5 weeks of shows or something like that. It which I shouldn't jinx it, but it probably is a record, and people are starting to wonder now if this is just AI generated, because I'm showing too much technical skill for this to be the Nick Suter of in time. But,
are you really, Nick?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Or are
that was
you
the other thing. And one of the AIs and to give the AIs different personalities, so these AIs, they've been experimenting with different personalities, and one of them was into holistic healing and all this other stuff, and said, yeah, you can cure cancer by putting crystals up to the so on and so forth. And someone said, is that a real solution? And the AI said yes. And so they've been and they went to Zuckerberg with this and said, we permit our AIs to lie and to spread misinformation because humans do it. So we want them to be as realistic as possible. It's just like, wow. Oh. So let's see. Internet okay. Check. Goats rounded up. Hey. Have a good one, sir. You rock. Slava Ukraini. Royam Slava. Thank you very much once again for your super chat. Spasiba Bolshoya. Sinister Porpoise, $5.12. AI is simply simulating human intelligence. It is a much broader term, but Turing said a long time ago, asking if a machine can think is the wrong question. I don't remember the second part of that Turing quote. So put that in the live chat. I'll give the
Probably something to do with the machine acting in its own interests.
Well, I love and it's awfully reductionist. It's not true, but it's not the AI that can pass the Turing test that scares me. It's the one that deliberately fails. So, all right, I'm gonna go with one thing just because I said it. It's like one of those things you can't say it and then not play it. Why is the U.S. hosting the Peace Summit in Alaska? Let's find out from the great lady herself why.
How did you settle on Alaska as the site? There were some other sites being discussed. This is like it was a midpoint between the two meetings.
There were many sites discussed, but of course Alaska is a state within the United States of America, so the president is very honored and looks forward to hosting President Putin on American soil.
Last thing, is there
So Alaska was chosen because it is a state and it is on American soil. Alaska's not on American soil. It is American, but okay. I understand what you mean. Don't hurt yourself. All right. So, she's just, wow. It's can you get a human to think that they're talking to a machine? Yeah. All right. So, any final thoughts on anything we've covered? Do you have any predictions of what we're going to see in the next week?
Well, we've already essentially predicted that the meeting in Alaska is going to produce nothing meaningful. I'm interested to see what comes of the thing in D.C. with the National Guard being deployed the way they are. It's just, you wonder, what really are they going to be deployed against? Because, sending them out to act against street crime or whatever is kind of ridiculous, because how do they know who the criminals are? They're not police. They don't have access to the police records or anything. So, yeah, it'll be very interesting, I think, to see what comes of that. The other thing that we didn't touch on, I don't think we want to, but I think is something we might want to consider next time, is the increasing evidence that the White House is using its influence to doctor reports, economic reports, public health reports, weather reports, etc., coming out of the federal system to say what they want it to say rather than what the actual data shows.
I will say I am genuinely surprised that the stock market did not react worse to that than it did, because when he came out with the fake figures to back up what he wanted to say about his tariffs were doing for the economy, the one thing business has to have to operate is reliable data and stability. And he's already been threatening stability, and he's compromising their data, and they need that data. They can't grift the American worker if they don't know how many American workers there are, what they're looking for, and I'm absolutely not trying to pose the corporations as a good guy here, but they need that data to be accurate. So I am really surprised that they didn't just tank the stock market and say, "Hey, you don't screw with those numbers."
Yeah. So that's something I'm hoping will at least hit the news in a semi-major way in the coming weeks, is how the administration is literally lying through its teeth about how things are going. Eventually that information is going to come out, and they're going to be seen as the bald-nosed Pinocchio liars that they are.
I hope so. I hope this isn't ushering in a new age of we're getting closer and closer to the Soviet Union. It's scary. It's just like, I believe what Daddy Trump tells me to believe. Why? Because he told me to believe
This is
it.
1984 writ large.
Yeah, it's screwing with the information. Wow. I mean, he already did that, but earlier it was just really silly. It was no, the hurricane's going this way. Just with his
I have a
marker.
marker that allows me to change the direction of airflow.
But it's like it stops being funny when he's just like, oh, I brought in an economist from the Heritage Foundation, it was Heritage Foundation, to explain why the numbers that we've been accumulating for the last year are in fact not real.
My good friend David Duke, Grand Wizard of the KKK, is going to talk to you about how we have no racial problems in this country anymore. I've solved them all.
Yeah. Oh. Jesus. Yep. All right. Titan wanted to know, I was tempted on asking. I don't want to tempt fate, but I know what he's getting at, which is a fair question, but maybe too difficult. So, I assume there's going to be protests in D.C. this weekend. I assume there's going to be attempts at false flagging this weekend. Anybody who's organizing a protest, if they're doing so even half responsibly, has to be aware of this. And this is something that Democrats have been getting much better about recognizing. And the protests going on in Los Angeles, we saw some of that. Any thoughts on this weekend? Do you think it's? For me, I'll give you an out right now, which is I can't hazard a guess. I have no idea what's going to happen this weekend. It may be nothing, and maybe something big. I wouldn't be surprised either way.
I think that as the opposition protests grow, the MAGA movement, hardliners in particular, will begin to look for ways of causing false flag incidents. Oh, look at those horrible liberal protesters smashing up the bank windows over there. We've got to stop this. They're all out of control. Yeah, except the guys throwing the bricks or.
And there was a lot of that in the Black Lives Matter protests.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not to say there weren't some legitimate, there weren't some actual protesters who were destroying stuff, but there was a lot. They had an interview with a very small, loose group of guys who had been starting false flags, and they said, yeah, and we worked in with the protesters, and we were kind of hoping that they'd screw up and do something real bad themselves, so we didn't actually have to do anything. And then when they didn't, they're like, okay, well, we got to throw a brick or do something. It's just like, holy shit. Oh dear. All right. Well, Lance, it's been another delightful downtime with you. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you.
And gracing us with your presence. And
it was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, sir. We've got, our Discord link has been dropped repeatedly. It should also be in the description, but I'm sure we'll get one more drop before we're done. Our next scheduled show is in time at 9 p.m. Eastern with 𝐒𝐨𝐮𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫, and we're going to look and see what for the fall, what kind of our lineup is going to be, and see if we can get you guys some more interesting offerings out there. So, but hey, join us on the Discord, and you can learn all about that. Thank you to UTV and Ham, 𝐒𝐚𝐦 and Sinister Porpoise for your donations. Thank you to all our members. Thank you to the mods and everyone who's working hard in a time that is getting far more difficult to mod and to walk that straight path. So thank you all who have been doing that, and I look forward to seeing you guys, barring any breaking news. I'm not even going to guess. It's like I'll be seeing you, let's say 12 hours. I'm going to guess 12 hours before Trump does something that we end up. So see you all in about 12 hours. Have a good night, Lance.
Take
See
care.
you all.